In the sprawling megacities of the Terran Colonial Union, where 1,000 different species walk the same rain-soaked streets, there exists an unspoken truth. The strong protect themselves, and the weak simply disappear into the shadows. Tonight, that truth will be challenged by the most unlikely pair imaginable. What happens when a creature capable of incinerating entire star systems finds itself helpless and alone? What happens when a human, one of the galaxy's most feared and unpredictable species, chooses compassion over profit? Some say humans are monsters. Others whisper they're miracle workers. But on this cold, drizzle-soaked night in Sector 7, one blind dragon is about to discover which legend is true. This is not a story about heroes and villains. This is a story about what happens when two outcasts find each other in the darkness, and how sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't plasma cannons or quantum shields. It's simply giving a damn about someone else. The galaxy will never be the same. The rain fell in sheets across New Turos, turning the already grimy streets of Sector 7 into rivers of neon-tinted sludge. Marcus Chun pulled his worn jacket tighter around his shoulders and quickened his pace, the familiar weight of his overseer badge bouncing against his chest with each hurried step. 23 years of managing the most dangerous district in the colony, and he still couldn't get used to nights like this, when the weather turned nasty and the predators came out to play. The massive creature huddled in the alleyway between two towering hab-blocks caught his attention first as a shadow, then as something far more extraordinary. Marcus stopped dead in his tracks, rain streaming down his face as he tried to process what he was seeing. A dragon. An actual, honest-to-God space dragon, easily 30 feet from snout to tail, crammed into an alley barely wide enough to contain its bulk. Its scales, which should have been the deep purple-black of the void between stars, were instead a sickly gray-green, and they were covered in what looked like industrial grime and worse things Marcus didn't want to identify. The creature's massive head was pressed against the filthy ground, and its breathing was labored, each exhale sending small puffs of steam into the cold night air. Marcus had seen a lot of strange things in Sector 7. The district was a melting pot of every species in known space, from the crystalline Zephyrians to the slug-like mollusker trade merchants. But this was different. This was one of the legendary void dragons of the Kepler system, beings so powerful that entire fleets would alter course just to avoid their hunting grounds. And this one was clearly in trouble. The dragon's eyes should have been twin supernovas of brilliant light, capable of seeing across vast distances of space and through multiple spectrums simultaneously. Instead, they were clouded over with a milky white film that spoke of blindness and pain. Marcus watched as the creature lifted its great head slightly, nostrils flaring as it tried to scent its surroundings. The movement was clumsy, uncertain, nothing like the fluid grace these beings were known for. "Jesus," Marcus whispered under his breath, taking a cautious step closer. "What the hell happened to you?" The dragon's head snapped in his direction at the sound of his voice, and Marcus got his first good look at the extent of the damage. The creature's face was a mess of old scars and fresh wounds, some still weeping a substance that glowed faintly blue in the darkness. Its left horn had been broken off about halfway up, leaving a jagged stump, and there were what looked like restraint marks around its neck and behind its front legs. Someone had captured this magnificent being. Someone had hurt it, probably tortured it, and then dumped it here in the worst part of the city to die. Marcus felt something hot and familiar rise in his chest, the same anger that had gotten him demoted from the core worlds to this backwater posting in the first place. He'd always had a problem with bullies, and whoever had done this to the dragon was the worst kind of bully imaginable. The creature tried to stand as Marcus approached, its massive muscles bunching and straining, but it only managed to lift itself a few inches before collapsing back down with a sound like a building falling over. It was weak, possibly starving, and definitely dehydrated. The fact that it was still alive at all was a testament to the incredible durability of its species. "Easy there, big guy," Marcus said softly raising his hands even though he knew the dragon couldn't see them. I'm not going to hurt you. My name's Marcus Chun, and I'm the district overseer here. I want to help. The dragon's massive head turned toward him again, and Marcus could see intelligence flickering in those ruined eyes. These beings were supposed to be as smart as humans, maybe smarter. This one understood him. Marcus activated his comm unit and scrolled through his contacts until he found the one he was looking for. Dr. Sarah Kim had been running the underground veterinary clinic in Sector 9 for the past 5 years, and she was one of the few people Marcus trusted completely. If anyone could help the dragon, it would be her. Sarah, it's Marcus. I need you to drop everything and get to the alley between Hablocks 47 and 48 in Sector 7. Bring your mobile unit and every piece of medical equipment you can carry. Marcus, do you have any idea what time it is? And what's so urgent that it can't wait until I've got a void dragon here, Sarah? It's been tortured and left to die. It's blind and barely conscious, and if we don't do something fast, we're going to lose it. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Did you just say a void dragon? In Sector 7. Yeah. And, Sarah, bring the heavy-duty stuff. This isn't going to be a simple house call. While he waited for Sarah to arrive, Marcus did what he could to make the dragon more comfortable. He found a tarp in a nearby dumpster and draped it over the creature's back to keep the rain off, then used his jacket to wipe some of the grime away from its face. The dragon didn't resist, which told Marcus just how weak it really was. You're going to be okay, he whispered as he worked. I don't know who did this to you, but they're not going to get away with it. I promise you that. The dragon made a sound deep in its throat. Not quite a purr, but something that conveyed understanding and maybe even gratitude. Marcus had heard that dragons were telepathic, but this one seemed too weak for mental communication. Instead, it slowly, carefully moved its massive head until it was resting against Marcus's leg. The gesture was so trusting, so vulnerable, that Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. This incredible being, this apex predator of the void, was depending on him. A human, one of the species that most of the galaxy considered to be unpredictable at best and dangerous at worst. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later with her mobile medical unit, a converted hover truck loaded with enough equipment to outfit a small hospital. She was a small woman in her 40s with graying hair and steady hands, and she took one look at the dragon and immediately went into professional mode. Dear God, she breathed, pulling out a scanner and running it over the creature's massive form. Marcus, what you've got here isn't just a torture dragon. This is Alexandra, the void matriarch of the Kepler system. She's been missing for 3 months. Marcus felt his blood run cold. The void matriarch wasn't just any dragon. She was the leader of one of the most powerful species in known space. The Galactic Council had been searching for her since she disappeared, and there was a reward of 50 million credits for information leading to her safe return. 3 months, Marcus said quietly, looking down at the broken creature before them. Jesus, Sarah, what they must have put her through. Sarah's scanner beeped, and she frowned at the readout. Her neural pathways are intact, which means the blindness is probably reversible. But Marcus, look at this. She showed him the scanner's display, pointing to a series of red marks along the dragon's spine. These are injection sites. Someone's been experimenting on her. The hot anger in Marcus's chest flared into full-blown rage. Not only had someone kidnapped and tortured the matriarch, they'd been using her as a test subject. He thought about the kinds of people who operated in the shadows of Sector 7. Black market researchers, organ dealers, slavers who specialized in exotic species. Any one of them would see a captured dragon as the score of a lifetime. Can you help her? Marcus asked. Sarah was already pulling medical supplies from her truck. I can treat the immediate injuries and malnutrition, and I might be able to reverse some of the neural damage. But Marcus, this is going to take time. Days, maybe weeks. And whoever did this to her is going to come looking when they realize she's gone. Marcus looked down at Zoalexandra, at the way she was still resting her massive head against his leg, trusting him completely. The smart thing to do would be to contact the Galactic Council immediately, collect the reward, and let them handle the situation. It would be safe, profitable, and completely by the book. But Marcus had never been good at doing the smart thing. "Then we better get to work," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "What do you need me to do?" Over the next 6 hours, Marcus and Sarah worked tirelessly to stabilize the dragon's condition. They moved her to an abandoned warehouse that Marcus knew about, a place where they could work without attracting attention. Sarah cleaned and treated the worst of Alexander's wounds while Marcus used his overseer access codes to quietly redirect power to the building and set up a basic life support system. As dawn broke over New Turos, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Alexandra was resting more comfortably. Her breathing had stabilized, and Sarah's scan showed that her vital signs were slowly improving. The dragon was still blind and weak, but she was alive, and that was more than Marcus had dared to hope for when he first found her. "She's going to make it," Sarah said, wiping exhaustion from her eyes. "It's going to be a long road, but she's going to make it." Marcus nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and determination settling in his chest. He'd made his choice back in that alley, and he wasn't going to back down now. Someone had hurt Alexandra, had reduced one of the galaxy's most magnificent beings to a broken, frightened creature hiding in the rain. And Marcus was going to make sure they paid for it. But first, he had to keep her safe. And that meant keeping her hidden from whatever forces had captured her in the first place. As if she could sense his thoughts, Alexandra lifted her great head and turned toward him. Her clouded eyes couldn't see him, but somehow she found his face anyway. When she spoke, her voice was like distant thunder, barely above a whisper, but carrying incredible weight. "Human," she said, the word forming perfectly despite her draconic vocal cords. "Why do you help me?" Marcus reached out slowly and gently touched the scales on her snout. They were warm, like touching the hull of a ship that had been sitting in sunlight. "Because everyone deserves help when they need it," he said simply, "and because what they did to you is wrong." Alexandra closed her eyes, and Marcus could have sworn he saw something like tears leaking from beneath her damaged lids. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember who took me. And, human Marcus Chun, when I'm strong again, there will be a reckoning." Marcus smiled grimly. He was looking forward to it. 3 days later, Marcus was beginning to understand why humans had developed such a reputation for stubbornness throughout the galaxy. Every instinct he possessed as a district overseer screamed at him to report Alexander's recovery to the authorities, claim the reward, and let someone else handle the complex political implications of harboring the missing Void Matriarch. Instead, he found himself making his third trip of the day to the abandoned warehouse, carrying another load of medical supplies and high-protein nutrient paste that Sarah insisted was crucial for the dragon's recovery. The warehouse had been transformed over the past 72 hours. What had started as an empty shell filled with dust and broken machinery was now a makeshift medical facility. Marcus had used his overseer credentials to quietly requisition equipment from various city departments. Environmental controls from the atmospheric processing plant, lighting systems from decommissioned hab blocks, even a small fusion generator that he'd officially listed as being tested for efficiency upgrades. It was creative paperwork at best, outright theft at worst, but Marcus had learned long ago that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing weren't the same thing. Alexandra was awake when he entered, her massive form curled in the center of the space like a living mountain. Her head tracked his movement despite her blindness, her other senses apparently sharp enough to pinpoint his location with incredible accuracy. "You're late," she said, her voice still weak, but carrying a hint of the authority that had once commanded entire dragon flights across the void. "I was beginning to think you had reconsidered your commitment to my recovery." Marcus set down the supplies and activated the warehouse's new lighting system. Soft, warm light filled the space, carefully calibrated to avoid causing further damage to Alexandra's injured eyes, while still allowing Marcus and Sarah to work effectively. "Sorry about that. had to deal with some questions from the city council about resource allocation. Apparently, Sector 7 has been using 30% more power than usual this week, and they wanted to know why. And what did you tell them? Marcus grinned. They were testing new efficiency protocols for the winter heating systems, which is technically true. You do generate a lot of heat, and we're trying to keep you warm. The dragon made a sound that might have been laughter. I am beginning to understand why your species has such a reputation for creative problem solving, and for driving other species to distraction with your flexibility regarding rules and regulations. We prefer to think of it as adaptive thinking, Marcus replied, beginning to unpack the medical supplies. Sarah would be arriving soon for Vexandra's afternoon treatment, and she made it clear that having everything properly organized was crucial for the dragon's continued improvement. Over the past 3 days, Marcus had learned more about void dragons than most humans ever would. Vexandra was nearly 800 years old, which made her young by dragon standards, but ancient by human ones. She'd been the matriarch of the Kepler system for only 50 years, inheriting the position when her predecessor had been killed in a conflict with space pirates. The dragons of her flight were spread across dozens of star systems, and her disappearance had left them leaderless and vulnerable. Tell me about the ones who took you, Marcus said as he worked. This wasn't the first time he'd asked, but Vexandra had been too weak to give detailed answers before. Now, with her strength slowly returning, he hoped she might be ready to share more information. The dragon's expression darkened, and for a moment Marcus caught a glimpse of the terrible power that lay dormant within her damaged form. They called themselves the Dominion Research Collective. Humans, mostly, though they had allies among the Vrex and the crystalline hegemony. They specialize in what they euphemistically term biological enhancement technology. Marcus felt his stomach turn. He'd heard whispers about the DRC in his work as an overseer, rumors of illegal experiments, black market organ harvesting, and worse things that happened in the shadows between stars. The fact that they were primarily human made his shame and anger burn even hotter. They captured me during a patrol flight near the edge of Kepler's space. Vexandra continued, her voice growing colder with each word. Used some kind of neural disruptor to blind me temporarily, then hit me with enough sedative to put down a small moon. When I woke up, I was in their research facility. Where? That's the problem. I don't know. They kept me sedated most of the time, and when I was conscious, the neural damage they were causing made it impossible to properly sense my surroundings. I know it was somewhere with artificial gravity and atmosphere, probably a space station or a large ship. But beyond that, she trailed off, frustration clear in her voice. Marcus nodded. Finding the DRC's base of operations would be crucial if they wanted to prevent them from capturing other dragons, or worse, coming after Vexandra again. But that was a problem for later. Right now, his focus had to be on her recovery. Sarah arrived an hour later, her small hover car loaded with even more medical equipment than usual. She'd been working around the clock to research dragon physiology, calling in favors from colleagues across the galaxy to get access to veterinary databases that most people didn't even know existed. "How's our patient today?" she asked, pulling on sterile gloves and activating her scanner. "Stronger," Vexandra replied before Marcus could answer. "The blindness is beginning to clear at the edges of my vision. I can see light and shadow now, where before there was only darkness." Sarah's face lit up with professional satisfaction. "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. The neural regeneration therapy is working faster than I expected. Dragon physiology is remarkably resilient." She spent the next 2 hours running detailed scans and administering treatments, her movements efficient and confident despite the fact that she was working on a creature unlike anything in her previous experience. Marcus watched from nearby, continuing to organize supplies and try not to think about the growing list of crimes he was technically committing by keeping Vexandra's present secret. Harboring a missing galactic citizen without reporting to authorities. Theft of city resources. Filing false reports with the municipal government. If anyone discovered what he was doing, his career would be over, and he'd probably spend the next decade in a penal colony. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to make the call to the Galactic Council and let them handle the situation. But every time he looked at Zyaxandra, at the trust in her damaged eyes and the gratitude in her voice when she thanked him for his help, Marcus knew he'd made the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking a few rules. "Marcus," Sarah said, interrupting his thoughts, "I need to talk to you privately." They moved to the far corner of the warehouse, out of Zyaxandra's hearing range. Though Marcus suspected the dragon's acute senses meant privacy was more of a polite fiction than a reality. "What is it?" he asked. Sarah's expression was troubled. "I've been running genetic analysis on the tissue samples I took from her wounds." Marcus, whoever did this to her, wasn't just experimenting randomly. They were trying to extract and synthesize specific compounds from her biology. What kind of compounds? The kind that could revolutionize space travel, for starters. Dragon neural tissue contains organic quantum processors that allow them to navigate hyperspace instinctively. If you could synthesize that and implant it into other beings. She trailed off, letting the implications speak for themselves. Marcus felt cold dread settling in his stomach. They were trying to create artificial dragons. Worse, they were trying to create humans with dragon abilities. The injection sites I found correspond to locations where experimental neural graphs will be most effective. Marcus, I think they were planning to use her as a living factory to produce enhancement materials. The warehouse seemed to grow colder around them. Marcus looked back at Zyaxandra, at the creature who had trusted him enough to let him help her, and felt his resolve harden into something unbreakable. "Then, we make sure they never get the chance to finish their work," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained worried. "There's something else. The genetic markers I found suggest this wasn't their first attempt. Marcus, I think there are other dragons out there, other victims we don't know about." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the warehouse. His comm unit crackled to life with urgent messages from the Sector 7 command center, and through the building's windows, he could see the distinctive blue-white glow of police hover cars converging on their location. "They found us," Zyaxandra said, her voice carrying a note of grim resignation. "I can sense them, humans with enhanced neural patterns. They're using the technology they stole from my people." Marcus grabbed his sidearm and moved toward the warehouse's main entrance. "Sarah, get behind cover." "Zyaxandra, how much of your strength has returned?" The dragon slowly, carefully, raised herself to her full height for the first time since Marcus had found her. Even weakened and partially blind, she was a magnificent sight, 30 feet of muscle, scale, and barely contained power. Her eyes, still clouded but showing hints of their former brilliance, blazed with ancient fury. "Enough," she said simply. The warehouse doors exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Figures in black combat armor poured through the breach, moving with inhuman speed and precision. Marcus could see the telltale glow of neural enhancement implants beneath their helmet visors, the same technology that the DRC had stolen from dragons like Zyaxandra. "Matriarch Zyaxandra," the lead figure called out, his voice artificially amplified by his armor speakers. "By order of the Dominion Research Collective, you are to return to custody immediately. Surrender peacefully, and your human accomplices will be allowed to live." Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between the intruders and the dragon. "Marcus Chun, District Overseer for Sector 7. You're operating without proper authorization in my jurisdiction. Stand down immediately." The lead figure tilted his head, and Marcus could hear synthetic laughter echoing from his speakers. "Overseer Chun, we know all about you. Your record of insubordination, your tendency to place personal feelings above proper procedure, your recent theft of city resources. Did you really think harboring a fugitive dragon would go unnoticed?" "She's not a fugitive," Marcus said, raising his weapon. "She's a victim, and I'm not going to let you take her. You're going to stop us? One human against a squad of enhanced operatives?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Not just one human." That's when Zyaxandra roared. The sound was indescribable, part battle cry, part primal scream, part something that bypassed the ears entirely and struck directly at the nervous system. The warehouse windows shattered, debris rained from the ceiling, and several of the DRC operatives stumbled backward despite their enhancement-boosted coordination. "I am Vexindra, a void matriarch of the Kepler system," the dragon declared, her voice now carrying the full weight of her authority. "You have wronged me, wronged my people, and violated the sacred laws that govern all civilized species. Face me and learn the price of your crimes." The battle that followed would become legend in the years to come. The day a blind dragon and a stubborn human overseer stood against impossible odds and refused to yield. Marcus fought with the desperate fury of someone protecting something precious, while Vexindra, despite her injuries and partial blindness, moved with the fluid grace of a creature born to cosmic warfare. But even legends have to face reality, and the reality was that they were vastly outnumbered by opponents with superior technology and enhanced abilities. Marcus felt his strength beginning to flag as the battle stretched on, and he could see that Vexindra was pushing her recovering body beyond safe limits. Just when it seemed like they might be overwhelmed, salvation arrived in the form of screaming engines and weapons fire from above. The warehouse roof exploded in a carefully controlled detonation, and through the smoke and debris descended a full squad of Galactic Council peacekeepers in gleaming white armor. At their head was a figure that made Marcus's heart leap with sudden hope: Commander Elena Vasquez, his former partner from his days working in the core worlds. "DRC operatives," Elena's voice boomed through the warehouse. "You are in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 2847 regarding the protection of endangered sapient species. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." The tide of battle shifted instantly. The DRC operatives, for all their enhancements and illegal technology, were no match for trained peacekeepers with full council authority. Within minutes, the surviving intruders were in custody, their leader's helmet cracked open to reveal a face marked with the distinctive scarring of extensive neural modification. "Hello, Marcus," Elena said as she removed her own helmet, revealing the same sharp features and steady eyes that Marcus remembered from their years working together. "Still getting yourself into impossible situations, I see." Marcus lowered his weapon, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. "Elena, how did you know? Did you really think you could hide a 40-foot dragon in the middle of New Turos without anyone noticing? The Council's been tracking energy fluctuations in Sector 7 for the past 3 days. When the DRC made their move tonight, we were already in position." Vexindra moved closer, her massive form casting shadows across the ruined warehouse. "Commander Vasquez, I remember your service record from the Council databases. You have my gratitude for your timely intervention." Elena inclined her head respectfully. "Matrios, Vexindra. The entire galaxy has been searching for you. Your flight commanders were prepared to declare war on half a dozen systems to secure your return. And they may still need to," the dragon replied grimly. "What we learned here tonight is only the beginning. The Dominion Research Collective has violated laws that have stood for millennia. They must be brought to justice, and their victims must be found and freed." Marcus looked between Elena and Vexindra, understanding beginning to dawn. "This isn't over, is it?" Elena's expression was grim. "Not even close. The DRC has resources and connections throughout the galaxy. Taking down one research facility won't be enough to stop them. We're going to need help from someone who understands their operations from the inside." She looked meaningfully at Vexindra, who nodded slowly. "You want me to help you find them, to lead you to their main facility. The Council is prepared to offer you full support and resources. But yes, Matriarch, we need you." Marcus felt something stirring in his chest, the same feeling he'd had years ago when he'd first joined the Peacekeepers before politics and bureaucracy had driven him to seek a quieter life as a district overseer. "What about me?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "Marcus, you're facing serious charges for theft of city resources, filing false reports, and harboring a fugitive. She wasn't a fugitive. She was, I know what she was. Elena interrupted with a slight smile. And the council knows what she was too, which is why those charges are going to disappear, and you're going to be offered a temporary commission as a special consultant on this operation. Marcus looked at Zexandra, who was watching him with eyes that were already beginning to show hints of their former brilliant fire. The dragon nodded slowly. I would be honored to have you continue as my ally, Marcus-chun. You have shown me that there are humans in this galaxy who understand honor, compassion, and justice. The DRC believes they can twist science to their cruel purposes. Let us show them what happens when good people refuse to stand aside. Marcus smiled, feeling years of frustration and stagnation falling away like old skin. When do we start? The Galactic Council's flagship determination was unlike any ship Marcus had ever served aboard. 3 kilometers of gleaming titanium and quantum steel, bristling with enough firepower to level a small moon. It represented the pinnacle of cooperative engineering between a dozen different species. As he stood in the observation lounge watching the stars streak past at faster-than-light speed, Marcus couldn't help but feel a mixture of awe and anxiety about the mission ahead. It had been 2 weeks since the raid on the warehouse, and the transformation in both Marcus and Zexandra had been remarkable. The dragon's vision was almost completely restored, her eyes once again blazing with the brilliant fire that marked her as one of the galaxy's apex predators. Her wounds had healed, leaving only faint scars as reminders of her ordeal, and her strength had returned in full. More importantly, her determination to see justice done burned brighter than ever. Marcus had undergone his own transformation. The temporary commission Elena had promised had come with access to the latest peacekeeper training and equipment. His body had been enhanced with military-grade neural interfaces and physical augmentations. Nothing as extreme as what the DRC used, but enough to let him keep up with beings who could bend space-time to their will. His mind had been filled with tactical knowledge, intelligence analysis protocols, and enough xenobiology to understand the creatures they might encounter. But the most significant change was in his purpose. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he was doing work that mattered, work that would make a real difference in the galaxy. Nervous, Elena's voice interrupted his thoughts. She joined him at the observation window, her own peacekeeper uniform bearing the insignia of the special task force they'd assembled. Excited, actually, Marcus replied. It's been a long time since I felt like I was part of something important. Through the ship's internal comm system, they heard Zexandra's voice addressing the assembled strike team. Intelligence analysis confirms that the DRC's primary research facility is located in the Vega Nebula, hidden within the electromagnetic interference of the stellar nursery. The facility is heavily defended and contains not only their research operations, but also holding cells for other captured specimens. Marcus and Elena made their way to the main briefing room, where nearly 50 beings from across the galaxy had gathered. There were peacekeepers in their distinctive white armor, dragonflight commanders with scales that seemed to absorb light itself, crystalline hegemony warriors whose bodies refracted the room's illumination into rainbow patterns, and even a small contingent of the reclusive ethereal collective, their forms barely visible as shifting patterns of energy and thought. At the center of it all was Zexandra, her magnificent form coiled around a holographic display that showed the Vega Nebula in 3-dimensional detail. Her voice carried clearly to every corner of the room as she continued the briefing. The facility designation is Prometheus Station, a name that should tell us everything we need to know about their hubris. According to the intelligence we gathered from the captured operatives, they have been conducting illegal experiments on captured members of at least 6 different species, including 3 other void dragons from the outer systems. A rumble of anger went through the assembled dragon commanders. The idea of their people being used as experimental subjects was clearly pushing them toward thoughts of immediate and violent retribution. However, Zexandra continued, her tone becoming more measured. A direct assault would likely result in the deaths of the prisoners they hold. The station is equipped with automated systems designed to eliminate all evidence of their operations if they are discovered. We must be more subtle. Commander Vasquez stepped forward, activating her own section of the holographic display, which is where our human consultant comes in. Marcus, would you care to explain your plan? All eyes turned to Marcus, and he felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. Speaking to a room full of beings who could each individually level a city block was intimidating, but he learned that sometimes the simplest plans were the most effective. The DRC's biggest weakness is their arrogance, he began, his voice growing stronger as he warmed to his subject. They see themselves as superior to the beings they experiment on, which means they underestimate the intelligence and capabilities of their prisoners. They also have a bureaucratic structure that values efficiency over security. He gestured to the holographic display, zooming in on the station's outer docking rings. According to our intelligence, they regularly receive supply shipments from civilian contractors who don't ask questions about what they're delivering. If we can intercept one of those shipments and substitute our own people, a Trojan horse, Elena said with approval. Classic human misdirection. Exactly. A small team infiltrates the station while the main force waits outside the nebula. Once we've disabled their security systems and freed the prisoners, the cavalry comes in to clean up. One of the Dragon commanders, a massive male with scales the color of deep space, raised his head. And who exactly would be on this infiltration team? The station's sensors will detect any draconic presence immediately. Marcus looked at Zyaxandra, who nodded slightly. They discussed this part of the plan extensively, and he'd known it would be the most controversial. The team will consist of myself, Commander Vasquez, and Matriarch Alexandra, he said calmly. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The Dragon commanders erupted in protests, their voices creating a sound like a thunderstorm made of indignation. The crystalline warriors chimed in harmonic disapproval, and even the usually serene ethereals flickered with agitated energy patterns. Absolutely not, the space-scale Dragon commander declared. We will not risk the matriarch on such a dangerous mission. She has already suffered enough at their hands. Zyaxandra rose to her full height, her presence instantly commanding attention and silence. Commander Thrax, I appreciate your concern, but I am not some fragile artifact to be protected in a museum. I am the matriarch of the Kepler Dragons, and I have debts of honor to pay. Her eyes blazed brighter as she continued. More importantly, I am the only one among us who has been inside their facility. I know their security protocols, their research procedures, and the location of their holding areas. Without me, any rescue attempt is likely to fail. Thrax's massive head lowered in reluctant acceptance, but his concern was clear. And if something goes wrong? If they capture you again, then you will do what must be done. Zyaxandra replied simply. The mission comes first. The prisoners come first. If saving them requires my sacrifice, then that is a price I am willing to pay. Marcus felt a surge of admiration for the dragon's courage, mixed with a determination to ensure that no such sacrifice would be necessary. That's why we're not going in blind this time. We have intelligence, we have backup, and we have each other. The DRC succeeded before because they caught the matriarch alone and unprepared. They won't have that advantage again. Elena activated another section of the display, showing detailed schematics of the supply freighter they'd identified for their infiltration. The Merchant's Dream is scheduled to dock with Prometheus Station in 36 hours. The ship's crew has been persuaded to cooperate with our operation in exchange for immunity from prosecution for their role in the DRC supply chain. She gestured to Marcus and Zyaxandra. Marcus will pose as a new research coordinator, complete with forged credentials and enough technical knowledge to pass initial screening. The matriarch will be disguised as a specimen being delivered for study, using a combination of holographic projection and neural dampening fields to mask her true capabilities. And I'll be their peacekeeper liaison, officially there to ensure proper handling of dangerous materials, Elena added. Once we're inside, we locate the prisoners, disable the station's defensive systems, and signal the main force. The plan was reviewed and refined over the next several hours, with input from every member of the strike force. Contingencies were planned for, equipment was distributed, and final preparations were made. As the briefing wound down, Marcus found himself alone with Zywixandra in one of the ship's smaller conference rooms. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "I meant what I said back there about not wanting to see you sacrifice yourself, but I also meant it when I said we need you for this to work." The dragon's massive head turned toward him, and he saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. Not just trust, but genuine friendship. "Marcus Chun, in the short time I have known you, you have shown me more compassion and honor than I received in centuries of dealing with galactic politics. If I must risk my life, I can think of no one I would rather have watching my back." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "The feeling's mutual, matriarch." "ZYX," she said quietly. "My friends call me ZYX." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of final preparations and nervous energy. Marcus underwent surgical modification to implant false credentials directly into his neural cortex, ensuring they would pass even deep scanning. Elena coordinated with the peacekeeper forces that would provide their backup once the mission began. And Zywixandra worked with the ship's technical specialists to create the holographic disguise system that would hide her true nature from the station sensors. As they approached the rendezvous point with the merchant's dream, Marcus found himself thinking about the path that had led him here. A few weeks ago, he'd been a burned-out district overseer looking forward to a quiet retirement. Now he was about to infiltrate one of the galaxy's most dangerous criminal organizations alongside a void dragon and his former partner. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. The transfer to the merchant vessel went smoothly, aided by the ship's captain, a grizzled Vrex trader who'd been smuggling questionable cargo for the DRC for nearly 5 years. Captain Kresh was more than happy to cooperate with the peacekeepers once Elena had shown him the evidence of exactly what kind of experiments his shipments had been supporting. "Never knew they was torturing dragons," he muttered as they prepared the disguise Zywixandra for transport. "Thought they was just running some kind of research operation. Dragons, though, that's crossing a line even for folks like me." The journey into the Vegan Nebula took 8 hours, with the freighter's navigation systems struggling to maintain course through the electromagnetic interference. Marcus used the time to review his cover identity one final time, memorizing the details of Dr. Marcus Kellerman, a xenobiologist with specializations in draconic neural architecture and a reputation for asking no questions about the source of his research materials. Elena, disguised as Peacekeeper Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, spent her time cataloging the specimen delivery and its associated paperwork. The irony of having Zywixandra officially classified as one adult void dragon, neural damaged, suitable for study, wasn't lost on any of them. As for Zywixandra herself, she remained motionless within the specially modified cargo container, the holographic projectors creating the illusion of a sedated and helpless creature while neural dampening fields masked her true mental activity from scanning devices. Marcus knew she was fully conscious and aware, but to any observer, she appeared to be nothing more than another victim of the DRC's cruelty. "Prometheus Station, this is Merchant Vessel Dream requesting docking clearance." Captain Kresh's voice crackled over the comm system. "We have a priority delivery for Research Division 7. The response came back in the clipped, professional tones that Marcus recognized from his own years in bureaucratic positions. "Merchant Vessel Dream, you are cleared for Docking Bay 12. Prepare for standard security screening upon arrival." Marcus felt his pulse quicken as the station came into view through the freighter's viewports. Prometheus Station was a sprawling complex of interconnected modules and research platforms, easily the size of a small city. Its outer hull was scarred by the constant bombardment of charged particles from the nebula, giving it the appearance of something that had been through multiple battles, which, Marcus reflected, was probably accurate. Organizations like the DRC didn't build facilities like this without making enemies. The docking procedure was routine and professional, exactly what Marcus had been hoping for. Overconfidence and bureaucratic efficiency were their allies in this operation. The station's security teams were clearly accustomed to processing regular deliveries, and they approached the Dream's cargo with the board competence of people who'd done the same job 1,000 times before. Dr. Kellerman? A woman in a white lab coat approached Marcus as he supervised the unloading of ZY Xandra's container. I'm Dr. Rachel Torres, head of xenobiological research. I understand you're a new neural architecture specialist. Marcus activated the personality subroutines that had been programmed into his cover identity, letting Dr. Kellerman's mannerisms and speech patterns overlay his own. That's correct. I'm looking forward to working with your team, Dr. Torres. The research opportunities here are unprecedented. Torres smiled with the kind of enthusiasm that Marcus found deeply disturbing. Wait until you see what we've accomplished with the dragon specimens. The neural mapping alone has opened up possibilities that were pure science fiction just a few years ago. As they moved through the station's corridors, Marcus caught glimpses of the DRC's research operations. Laboratory after laboratory filled with equipment he couldn't identify, holding cells containing creatures he'd never seen before, and scientists who moved with the casual efficiency of people who had long since stopped thinking about the ethical implications of their work. Your specimen will be housed in Research Bay 7, Torres continued as they walked. We've prepared a full neural analysis suite, and I'm particularly interested in seeing the damage patterns from our previous experiments. The rate of regeneration in draconic neural tissue is quite remarkable. Marcus nodded along with her explanation while mentally mapping the station's layout. They need to know the location of every security checkpoint and holding area if their plan was going to work. More importantly, he needed to locate the other prisoners, the 3 dragons, and unknown number of other beings that Zwaxandra had mentioned. Elena, walking slightly behind them in her role as the peacekeeper escort, was doing the same thing. Her enhanced vision was recording everything they saw, building a detailed map that would be transmitted to the strike force waiting outside the nebula. They reached Research Base 7, and Marcus watched as technicians began the process of unloading the Xandra's container. The dragon remained perfectly still as they ran their initial scans, the holographic projectors maintaining the illusion of a catatonic creature despite the blazing intelligence that Marcus knew was watching everything. Excellent neural definition, Torres murmured as she reviewed the scanner readings. The damage patterns are exactly what we were hoping to see. We should be able to begin extraction procedures within the hour. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Extraction procedures? Neural tissue sampling, Torres explained matter-of-factly. We found that fresh samples are much more viable than preserved specimens. Don't worry, the subjects are kept sedated throughout the process. They feel no pain. It took every ounce of Marcus's self-control to maintain his cover identity's calm demeanor. The casual way Torres discussed torturing sentient beings was almost too much for him to bear. He caught Elena's eye and saw his own anger reflected there. Soon, he promised silently to ZY Xandra. Very soon. I'd like to review your previous research before we begin, Marcus said aloud. Perhaps see some of the other specimens you've been working with? Torres's face lit up with professional pride. Of course. I'd be delighted to show you our other acquisitions. We have some truly remarkable subjects in the high-security containment areas. As they left Research Base 7, Marcus caught one last glimpse of Xandra's container. For just an instant, he could have sworn he saw a faint flicker of brilliance through the holographic disguise, the dragon's eyes, watching and waiting for the right moment to strike. The tour Torres provided was both enlightening and horrifying. The DRC had captured beings from across the galaxy, each chosen for some unique biological or neurological characteristic that could potentially be exploited. Marcus saw creatures he recognized, and others that were completely alien, all of them trapped in cells designed to contain powers and abilities that defied conventional understanding. But it was the dragon-holding area that truly broke his heart. 3 magnificent beings, each easily as large as Xandra, lay motionless in specialized containment cells. Their scales were dull, their eyes clouded with the same neural damage that had afflicted the matriarch, and their bodies showed clear signs of repeated surgical procedures. They were alive, but barely, kept in a state of drug compliance that allowed the researchers to work on them without resistance. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Torres said, apparently mistaking Marcus's horror for scientific appreciation. The male on the left is from the Centauri cluster. Remarkable regenerative capabilities. The female in the center has shown unprecedented resistance to neural manipulation, which has made her particularly valuable for our consciousness transfer experiments. And the juvenile on the right. Well, younger specimens are always more adaptable to enhancement procedures. Marcus forced himself to nod and make appropriate scientific noises while internally cataloging the security measures around the holding cells. Force fields, automated defense systems, and what looked like enough firepower to level a city block. Getting the prisoners out would require precise timing and no small amount of luck. "When do you think we might begin the extraction procedures on my specimen?" he asked. Torres checked her chronometer. "Within the next 2 hours, I'd say. I just want to run a few more tests to ensure optimal neural pathway targeting." 2 hours. That gave them barely enough time to locate all the prisoners, map the station's defenses, and prepare for the strike force's arrival. As they returned to Research Base 7, Marcus caught Elena's attention and gave her the subtle hand signal they'd agreed upon. It was time to put their plan into motion. The revolution was about to begin. The revolution began with a whisper. Marcus stood in Research Base 7, watching Dr. Torres prepare her instruments for what she euphemistically called neural tissue extraction, while Elena maintained her position by the door in her role as security escort. To any observer, it was a routine preparation for another horrific experiment. In reality, it was the calm before a storm that would reshape the balance of power in this corner of the galaxy. "Lieutenant Martinez," Torres called to Elena without looking up from her work. "Please ensure that all security protocols are active. We don't want any interruptions during the procedure." "Of course, Doctor," Elena replied, moving to the security panel. But instead of activating the lockdown protocols Torres expected, she was quietly uploading a virus that Marcus had designed during their journey. A piece of code that would give them control of the station's systems at the crucial moment. Marcus moved closer to Xandra's container, ostensibly to examine the specimen, but actually to whisper the code phrase they'd agreed upon. The stars remember. Inside the container, hidden by layers of holographic disguise and neural dampeners, the Void Matriarch's eyes opened fully for the first time since their infiltration began. The brilliant fire that had been banked and hidden now blazed with the fury of a collapsing star, and though Torres and her assistants couldn't see it, Marcus felt the change like electricity in the air. Xandra's mental voice touched his mind with the delicate precision of a master swordsman. "I am ready, my friend. Are you prepared for what must come next?" Marcus nodded slightly, his hand moving to the concealed weapon Elena had provided, a plasma disruptor disguised as a standard medical scanner. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Elena?" Elena's voice joined their mental conversation, her thoughts tight with controlled tension. Virus is uploaded and spreading through their network. I have control of internal security, life support, and communications. The strike force is in position and waiting for our signal. Then, let us begin. Alexandra's mental voice carried the weight of centuries of authority and the promise of justice long delayed. Dr. Torres, you have caused great suffering to my people. It is time to answer for your crimes. The holographic projectors around Alexandra's container flickered and died. Dr. Torres looked up from her instruments, confusion clear on her face as she saw the readings on her scanners suddenly shift from sedated specimen to something that made her equipment scream warnings about massive energy signatures and uncontained draconic consciousness. "That's impossible," she whispered, taking a step backward. "The neural dampeners should be." Her words were cut off as Alexandra rose from her container like a primordial force of nature unleashed. The specially reinforced walls of Research Bay 7 groaned and buckled as 30 feet of apex predator unfolded in a space designed to contain much smaller beings. The dragon's eyes blazed with the light of distant stars, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of one who had commanded the void itself. Dr. Rachel Torres, Zexindra said, her words rolling through the chamber like controlled thunder. I am Zexindra, matriarch of the Kepler Void Dragons. You stand accused of crimes against sapient life, torture, and violations of the Galactic Accords on the treatment of prisoners. How you plead? Torres stammered, her face pale with terror as she finally understood the magnitude of what she and her colleague had attempted. You can't be. The neural damage should have. Should have what? Broken my mind as you broke the minds of my flight kin? Should have left me helpless as you harvested pieces of my people for your twisted experiments. ZY voice grew colder with each word. You underestimated us, Dr. Torres. You underestimated the bonds of loyalty between species who understand honor. And, most critically, you underestimated the capacity of humans to choose justice over profit. Marcus stepped forward, his weapon now openly displayed. Elena, how are we doing on those security systems? All internal defenses are under our control, Elena reported, her fingers flying over the security panel as she systematically took command of the station's functions. I'm opening all containment cells and disabling the automated termination protocols. The other prisoners are free. Through the station's internal comm system, they could hear the sounds of awakening as dozens of imprisoned beings regained consciousness for the first time in months or years. Roars, cries, and calls in languages from across the galaxy filled the air as creatures who had given up hope suddenly found themselves able to think clearly again. Torres backed against the wall, her scientific bravado crumbling as she realized the full scope of what was happening. The station's defenses, the automated systems, they'll kill everyone if the security protocols are breached. Not anymore, Marcus said grimly. Your automated murder machines are offline. The only thing between you and justice now is the possibility that we might be feeling merciful. That was when the first of the freed prisoners arrived at Research Base 7. The 3 dragons Marcus had seen in the high-security containment area moved through the station's corridors with the fluid grace of creatures designed for combat in 3-dimensional space. Despite their obvious weakness and the lingering effects of months of captivity, they were magnificent to behold. Their scales had already begun to regain some of their natural luster, and their eyes blazed with the same brilliant fire that marked Xander's recovery. Matriarch, the largest of the 3, said as he entered the research bay, his massive form having to compress slightly to fit through the doorway. I am Keth Moore of the Outer Ring Flight. We have secured the primary research laboratories and detained the remaining staff members. 17 of our fellow prisoners are accounted for and safe. Well done, Keth Moore, Owaxander replied, never taking her attention from the cowering Dr. Torres. What of the station's command staff? Director Hamilton barricaded himself in the command center with 6 guards. They are attempting to send a distress signal to their off-site facilities. Elena looked up from her work at the security panel. Not anymore, they aren't. I've jammed all outgoing communications and locked down command center. They're not going anywhere. Marcus activated his comm unit, sending the signal they'd all been waiting for. Strike Force Alpha. This is Infiltration Team. Prometheus Station is secure. Repeat, the station is secure. You are cleared for docking and prisoner extraction. The response came back immediately in Commander Thrax's distinctive rumble. Acknowledged Infiltration Team. We are inbound and will arrive in 15 minutes. Excellent work. But even as victory seemed within their grasp, Marcus felt a chill of premonition. Organizations like the DRC didn't survive by being unprepared for setbacks, and Director Hamilton had been conspicuously absent from the research areas they'd seen during their tour. Elena, he said urgently, can you access the station's main database? I want to know what else they've been working on here besides the dragon experiments. Elena's expression grew troubled as she interfaced with the station's computer systems. Marcus, you need to see this. They haven't just been experimenting on captured beings. They've been developing something called Project Prometheus, a consciousness transfer protocol designed to implant draconic neural patterns into human subjects, creating human-dragon hybrids. Alexandra's voice carried a note of disgust. Worse than that, Elena continued, her face pale as she read through the classified files. They've been successful. The project has produced 12 stable hybrid subjects, and they're all aboard this station. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout Research Base 7. The lights shifted to the red of emergency protocols, and the station's defensive systems, the ones Elena thought she had disabled, suddenly roared back to life. Dr. Torres smiled for the first time since Alexandra had revealed herself. Did you really think we would build a facility like this without redundant security measures? Director Hamilton has activated the Prometheus protocols. You've just given him the perfect test scenario for our hybrid soldiers. The main entrance to Research Bay 7 exploded inward, filling the chamber with smoke and debris. Through the haze emerged figures that Marcus's mind struggled to process. Humans in appearance, but moving with the fluid grace of dragons, their eyes blazing with unnatural fire, their hands crackling with energy that should have been impossible for any terrestrial being to control. 12 enhanced human subjects, the lead figure announced, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested vocal cords modified far beyond normal human parameters. Designation: Prometheus 1 through 12. Mission parameters: recapture escaped specimens and eliminate unauthorized personnel. Alexandra moved to place herself between the hybrid soldiers and the humans who had helped her, her massive form radiating protective fury. Abominations, she snarled. You have violated the most sacred laws of consciousness and identity. No being should be forced to become something other than what they were born to be. Prometheus 1 tilted his head with a gesture that was eerily reminiscent of draconic body language. We were not forced, matriarch. We volunteered. Humanity's greatest weakness has always been our physical limitations. The DRC has given us the chance to transcend those limitations. At what cost? Marcus demanded, raising his weapon. Your humanity? Your souls. Small prices for the power we have gained. Prometheus 1 replied. Observe. The hybrid soldier raised his hand, and Marcus watched in horror as space itself seemed to bend around his fingers. The same power that allowed dragons to navigate hyperspace instinctively was being wielded by a being that had once been human, and the sight of it was deeply wrong on a level that bypassed rational thought entirely. The battle that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The Prometheus hybrids moved with superhuman speed and grace, wielding powers that bent the laws of physics while retaining enough human tactical thinking to coordinate their attacks effectively. They were, in every measurable sense, the perfect fusion of human ingenuity and draconic capability. But they had made one crucial error in their design philosophy. As Alexandra and her fellow dragons engaged the hybrid soldiers in combat that shook the station's very foundations, Marcus noticed something that the DRC scientist had apparently overlooked. The hybrids fought with mechanical precision, their enhanced abilities coordinated through shared neural links that made them formidable as a unit. But they showed no individual initiative, no capacity for the kind of creative problem-solving that had always been humanity's greatest strength. They had gained the power of dragons, but lost the adaptability that made humans dangerous. Elena. Marcus called out as he dodged a blast of directed energy that melted a hole through the station's bulkhead. Can you access their neural link network? Working on it, Elena replied, her fingers flying over her portable interface unit while she took cover behind Alexandra's massive form. Their link protocols are based on modified dragon neural architecture, but the implementation is... Marcus, this is brilliant and horrifying at the same time. Can you disrupt it? Maybe. But I'll need time. Time was exactly what they didn't have. The hybrid soldiers were pressing their attack with relentless efficiency, and even the combined might of 4 adult dragons was being tested by their unnatural abilities. Worse, Marcus could hear similar battles taking place throughout the station as other Prometheus units engaged the freed prisoners and the arriving strike force. That was when Marcus had an idea that was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. ZYX, he called to the matriarch, using her familiar name for the first time in combat. I need you to establish a mental link with me. What? Marcus, in the middle of battle, a mental link could trust me. Marcus dove toward the nearest control panel. Elena's security overrides, allowing him access to the station's internal systems. If these hybrids are networked together, then they're vulnerable to the same kind of virus attack that Elena used on the security systems. Understanding flashed in ZYXandra's blazing eyes. The mental link she established with Marcus was unlike anything he had ever experienced. His consciousness suddenly expanded to encompass not just his own thoughts, but hers as well, along with the vast tapestry of memory and experience that came with 8 centuries of life among the stars. But, more importantly, the link gave him access to draconic neural architecture that his human brain could never have achieved on its own. Working together, Marcus and ZYXandra crafted a virus specifically designed to exploit the hybrid soldiers' shared neural network. It wasn't a simple computer program. It was a living thing made of thought and shaped by human creativity and powered by draconic mental discipline. Elena uploaded the virus through her security access while Marcus and ZYXandra maintained the mental link that kept it stable. For a moment that stretched into eternity, Marcus felt his consciousness spread across the station's network, touching the twisted minds of the Prometheus hybrids and finding the human cores that still existed beneath the draconic overlays. The effect was immediate and decisive. The 12 hybrid soldiers suddenly stopped their coordinated assault, confusion replacing mechanical precision as their shared neural link dissolved into chaos. Without the artificial unity that had made them formidable, they were revealed as what they truly were: human beings who had been subjected to surgical and mental modifications that their psyches were never designed to handle. Several of them collapsed entirely, their enhanced abilities failing as their fractured minds struggled to cope with conflicting neural architectures. Others began to revert toward more recognizably human behavior patterns, the draconic overlays failing as the virus Marcus and ZYXandra had created restored their individual consciousness. Prometheus 1 was the last to fall, his artificially enhanced form trembling as he looked around Research Bay 7 with eyes that were suddenly recognizably human again. What have I done?" he whispered, his voice no longer carrying impossible harmonics. "What did they make me do?" Marcus approached him carefully, his weapon lowered, but ready. "What's your name?" "Your real name, not your designation." "David," the former hybrid soldier replied, tears streaming down his face as memories of his actions while under DRC control came flooding back. "David Chun. I was a researcher, xenobiology specialist. They said they could make me better, make me more than human. I didn't know what they were really doing." "It's okay, David," Marcus said gently, though he couldn't help but notice the shared surname. "You're free now. We all are." Through the station's comm system, they could hear similar scenes playing out throughout Prometheus Station as the virus spread through the facility's network, freeing other hybrid soldiers and disrupting the remaining automated defenses. The battle was over, but Marcus suspected the real work was just beginning. Director Hamilton's voice suddenly echoed through the station's speakers, filled with rage and desperation. "This is not over. You may have won this battle, but the Dominion Research Collective operates in a dozen systems across the galaxy. We have allies, resources, and the backing of beings more powerful than you can imagine. This is just one facility." Alexandra's mental voice touched Marcus's mind one last time before their link dissolved. "Asterisk then, we will find them all, my friend." And we will show them what happens when honorable beings unite against those who would corrupt the gifts of consciousness and identity. Asterisk Marcus smiled grimly as the Galactic Council Strike Force finally breached the station's docking bays, their white armor gleaming as they spread throughout the facility to secure the remaining DRC personnel and evidence. The war against the Dominion Research Collective had begun in earnest, but for the first time since this whole adventure started, Marcus was confident they would win. After all, they had something the DRC would never understand. They had each other. 6 months after the liberation of Prometheus Station, Marcus Chun stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned GCS Harmony, watching as the combined fleet of the Galactic Council prepared for what would hopefully be the final assault on the Dominion Research Collective. The ship was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human tactical systems integrated with Dragon neural networks, crystalline shield technology powered by ethereal energy matrices, and weapons systems that drew from the military traditions of a dozen different species. It was also the flagship of Task Force Prometheus, the multi-species organization that had grown from their initial rescue mission into something far greater, a permanent alliance dedicated to hunting down those who would abuse and exploit sapient life for profit or power. "You're brooding again." Elena's voice interrupted his thoughts as she joined him at the observation window. Her uniform now bore the insignia of Task Force Commander, a position she'd accepted reluctantly, but filled with remarkable skill. Thinking, Marcus corrected, though he had to admit there might have been some brooding involved. About how we got here, about what we're about to do, about whether we're making the right choices. Through the transparent aluminum barrier, they could see the fleet arrayed in formation around them. Dragonflight squadrons moved in perfect synchronization with Peacekeeper destroyers, while crystalline battleships provided mobile fortress platforms for the smaller, more agile vessels. At the center of it all, the Determination served as the operational command center, its massive bulk bristling with communication arrays and tactical coordination systems. But the most impressive sight was Hexandra herself, her magnificent form moving through space without need for mechanical assistance, leading a formation of nearly 50 other dragons from across the galaxy. Word of her rescue and the atrocities committed by the DRC had spread throughout the Draconic communities, and volunteers had come from every system where people flew. The largest gathering of void dragons in recorded history now prepared to bring justice to those who had wronged them. "I keep thinking about Director Hamilton's words," Marcus continued, "about the DRC having allies and resources we couldn't imagine, about this being just one facility." Elena nodded grimly. "The intelligence we've gathered since Prometheus Station confirms he wasn't bluffing. The DRC operates research facilities in at least 8 systems, with political connections that reach into the highest levels of several planetary governments. Taking them down is going to require more than just military action." That was the challenge they'd been grappling with for months. The Dominion Research Collective wasn't just a criminal organization. It was a network of legitimate businesses, research institutions, and political entities that had gradually been corrupted by the promise of power and profit. Dismantling it would require careful surgical strikes rather than overwhelming force. And even then, there was no guarantee they could eliminate all of its influence. "Any word from the infiltration teams?" Marcus asked. "Beta Team has confirmed that the DRC's primary research facility in the Arcturus system is operational and heavily defended. Gamma Team reports similar findings in the Vega colony worlds. And Alpha Team," Elena paused, her expression troubled. "Alpha Team has gone silent." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Alpha Team had been tasked with investigating reports of DRC activity in the Outer Rim territories, the lawless regions where the Galactic Council's authority was weakest, and organizations like the Collective could operate with near impunity. How long since their last report? 18 hours. Could be communication interference from the stellar phenomena in that region, or it could be something worse. Before Marcus could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life with Alexandra's distinctive mental voice, broadcast through the neural link networks that had become standard equipment aboard task force vessels. Asterisk all units. This is Flight Leader ZYXandra. Long-range sensors have detected movement in the target system. Multiple DRC vessels are attempting to evacuate Facility Omega-7. We are cleared to engage. Asterisk the fleet moved as one, a carefully choreographed dance of ships and beings that represented the pinnacle of cooperative military planning. Marcus felt the familiar surge of acceleration as the Harmony leaped to faster-than-light speed, reality blurring around them as they crossed the vast distances between stars in minutes rather than years. Facility Omega-7 was hidden in the shadow of a gas giant in an otherwise uninhabited system, its location chosen specifically to avoid detection by Council patrols. It was larger than Prometheus Station had been, a sprawling complex of research modules and defensive platforms that spoke to years of careful construction and massive financial investment. It was also, according to their intelligence, the DRC's primary consciousness transfer facility, the place where they conducted their most advanced experiments in neural architecture modification and hybrid soldier creation. Tactical analysis complete, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the same Dr. Kim who had helped treat Alexander's injuries in that abandoned warehouse months ago. She'd accepted a commission with Task Force Prometheus and had become one of their most valuable tactical officers. The facility is protected by automated defense platforms using modified Council technology, and there are at least 12 heavy cruisers in defensive formation around the primary structure. Any sign of evacuation in progress? Elena asked from the command center. Confirmed. Multiple transport vessels are departing the facility at maximum acceleration. Long-range scans suggest they're carrying both personnel and research materials. Marcus studied the tactical display, his enhanced neural implants processing battle scenarios with inhuman speed. The DRC was trying to preserve their most valuable assets while abandoning the facility itself. A reasonable strategy if they thought they could escape before the task force arrived. They were wrong. Dragon flights, you are cleared to engage evacuation vessels, Elena commanded. Non-lethal capture preferred, but protect yourselves first. Peacekeeper squadrons, target the defensive platforms. Crystalline units, provide shield support for the primary assault. What followed was less a battle than a precisely executed dismantling operation. The dragons moved through space like living starfighters, their natural abilities allowing them to outmaneuver anything the DRC could field. ZYXandra led the assault on the evacuation ships, her flightkin moving in perfect coordination to disable engines and capture vessels without destroying them, and, more importantly, without harming the prisoners that intelligence suggested were being transported. The Peacekeeper squadrons eliminated the automated defenses with surgical precision, their weapons targeted specifically to disable rather than destroy wherever possible. And the crystalline battleships provided an impenetrable shield wall that protected the smaller vessels from the facility's heaviest weapons. Within an hour, Facility Omega-7 was secured, its staff in custody, and its research materials preserved as evidence. But, as Marcus had learned to expect, victory came with complications. Commander, Sarah's voice was tight with concern as she analyzed the captured data. You need to see this. The facility's records show that they've been in communication with someone using Council encryption codes. Elena and Marcus exchanged glances. The possibility that the DRC had infiltrated the Galactic Council itself was something they'd all feared but hoped wasn't true. How deep does it go? Elena asked. I'm still analyzing, but, Commander, the communications indicate that someone with high-level council access has been providing the DRC with intelligence about our operations. They knew we were coming. That explained why the evacuation had been so organized, why the facility's defenses had been configured specifically to counter task force tactics, and, most disturbingly, why Alpha Team had gone silent. Marcus activated his comm unit, connecting to ZYXandra, who was leading the search of the captured evacuation vessels. ZYX, what did you find on those transports? The dragon's mental voice carried undertones of barely controlled rage. 17 beings from 7 different species, all showing signs of neural modification experiments. But Marcus, there's something else. One of the transport vessels was carrying personnel records and research data that suggests the DRC has been planning something they call Project Ascension. Asterisk, what's Project Ascension? Mass consciousness transfer. They've been developing technology to upload multiple minds into specially prepared host bodies. According to these records, they believe they can create an army of hybrid soldiers in a matter of days rather than the months individual modification procedures require. Asterisk Marcus felt cold dread settling in his stomach. How many host bodies? The records indicate they have successfully prepared over 300 subjects for the process. And Marcus, all of the host bodies are human. Asterisk, the implications hit him like a physical blow. The DRC wasn't just planning to create hybrid soldiers. They were planning to hijack human consciousness on a massive scale, creating an army of beings who looked human, but thought with the modified neural patterns of their captors. Elena, Marcus called to the command center. We need to accelerate our timeline. If the DRC is planning something called Project Ascension, his words were cut off as alarms began blaring throughout the harmony. The tactical display suddenly showed dozens of new contacts emerging from hyperspace around them. DRC vessels that had apparently been waiting in nearby systems for exactly this scenario. It's a trap, Elena announced grimly. The facility was bait. They wanted us here. The largest of the DRC vessels, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the Determination, began broadcasting on all frequencies. Task Force Prometheus, this is Admiral Helena Voss of the Dominion Research Collective. You are guilty of terrorism, theft of proprietary research materials, and interference with legitimate scientific endeavors. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. Elena's response was immediate and uncompromising. Admiral Voss, this is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Galactic Council Task Force Prometheus. You are guilty of crimes against sapient life, illegal consciousness modification, and violations of the Galactic Accords. We will accept your surrender, but only unconditionally. Voss's laughter echoed across the communication channels. Commander Vasquez, you are about to learn why the Dominion Research Collective has thrived for so long. We don't just rely on superior technology and enhanced personnel. We rely on superior information. The tactical display suddenly shifted as 3 council vessels, ships that should have been their allies, changed course and began targeting task force positions. The mole within the Galactic Council wasn't just providing intelligence. They were commanding vessels in active combat. All units, we have friendly fire situations, Elena broadcast. Council vessels' integrity, justice, and liberty have been compromised. Treat them as hostile, but use non-lethal force where possible. What followed was the most complex battle Marcus had ever experienced. The task force found itself fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously, engaging the DRC fleet while trying to disable the compromised council vessels without harming their crews, all while protecting the research facility they'd captured and the prisoners they'd rescued. But the task force had advantages that the DRC had failed to account for. The neural link networks that connected human crews with Dragonflight leaders allowed for coordination and tactical response times that no conventional fleet could match. The Crystalline Warrior's shield technology proved remarkably effective against DRC weapons, while the Ethereal Collective's ability to disrupt electronic systems gradually began turning the tide in their favor. Most importantly, they fought with the unity of purpose that came from shared ideals rather than shared fear. The battle's turning point came when Zwaxandra, leading a coordinated strike by all 50 Dragonflight members, successfully disabled the DRC Dreadnought's main weapon systems. With their flagship crippled, the remaining DRC vessels began to withdraw, but not before Admiral Voss delivered one final taunt. You may have won this engagement, Task Force Prometheus, but Project Ascension is already underway. In systems across the galaxy, our enhanced operatives are implementing the final phase. By the time you realize the scope of our operations, it will be too late to stop us. As the DRC fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind their damaged flagship and the compromised council vessels, Marcus found himself looking at a tactical display that showed the true magnitude of their challenge. Red indicators marked DRC operations in dozens of systems, a network of facilities, and agents that spanned half the known galaxy. "Elena," he said quietly, "I think we're going to need a bigger task force." Elena nodded grimly, but there was something else in her expression, determination mixed with a fierce pride that Marcus recognized from their years working together in the core worlds. "Then, we'll build one," she said simply. "Species that have never cooperated before are working together in this fleet. Beings that were traditional enemies are fighting side by side for the same cause. If we can do this, we can do anything." Xandra's mental voice joined their conversation, carrying the wisdom of centuries and the strength of someone who had survived the worst the galaxy could offer. The collective believes that power comes from domination, that strength comes from making others weak. They will never understand that true power comes from lifting each other up. True strength comes from standing together against those who would corrupt the gifts we've been given. Marcus looked out at the fleet around them. Dragons and humans, crystallines and ethereals, peacekeepers and researchers, all united by the simple belief that every sapient being deserved to live free from fear and exploitation. 3 months later, Marcus stood once again on an observation deck, this time watching as the last known DRC facility was dismantled under careful supervision. Project Ascension had been stopped before it could be fully implemented. Admiral Voss and her senior staff were awaiting trial for crimes against sapient life, and the enhanced operatives who had infiltrated the Galactic Council had been identified and removed from positions of authority. The war wasn't over. It might never truly be over, as long as there were beings willing to exploit others for power and profit. But for now, the galaxy was a little safer, a little more just, and a little more united. "Any regrets?" Elena asked, joining him at the window as she had so many times before. Marcus thought about the question seriously. He'd given up a quiet retirement as a district overseer to embark on a galaxy-spanning crusade against forces that had seemed impossibly powerful. He'd risked his life, his sanity, and everything he cared about in the name of doing what was right. "None," he said finally. "Not a single one." Xandra's mental voice touched his mind one last time, carrying warmth and friendship that transcended species boundaries. Nor do I, Marcus Chun. When I was lost and blind and broken, you chose to help rather than profit. You showed me that there are beings in this galaxy who understand that we are all stronger when we stand together. That lesson will guide us through whatever challenges lie ahead. Marcus smiled, watching as the last pieces of the DRC facility were carefully loaded onto transport vessels for analysis and evidence preservation. Somewhere out there, other beings might be planning similar atrocities, might be convinced that might made right, and that the strong had the right to exploit the weak. They would learn otherwise, because now the galaxy had something it had never had before, a permanent alliance of species united not by conquest or profit, but by the simple belief that everyone deserved to be free. And that, Marcus reflected, was the most human thing of all, the stubborn insistence that everyone deserved better, even when achieving that better world seemed impossible. Especially then, the stars wheeled overhead, vast and eternal, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus Chun looked at them and saw hope.